Alright, all the plots and bribes have been written down. Turns out there are no bribes here. The Muslims are again not doing a whole lot. I find it hard to figure out what to do with them. I'm really trying to locate them in places where they might eventually be able to engage in useful combat, but also that they might be able to increase their income during this period, especially with someone like the Fatimids or Syrians who are far behind. The Muslims are trying to pull out, but we'll get to them in a moment. You can see I split my northern, or Normans, into two stacks. Now there's only one command space for any Normans, so the other one's just a big pile of units, which is fine. There's, as long as you don't have a whole force in one hex, you're probably pretty decent. The Normans have a big stack though. It is kind of difficult because you have to worry about all these little boxes and count them up. I record the amount of troops with each person. That'll help work my way through the turn so it's not too expensive. But now we come to the random events phase. And what happens in the random events phase? Every player is going to be rolling on this First Crusade random events table here. First die will be the red die. So we'll start off with the Fatimids. It doesn't really matter the order apparently. And we'll be looking up the effect. The Crusaders will be playing on this set of tables, the Muslims on this set. So let's see what happens with the Fatimids. They get a 35, which is number 5, and we look that over. They get a treachery point, CDS Volt number 3. He's going to get a treachery point which goes to a specific leader. Okay, so already now we've got another bit of bookkeeping. I'm going to give that treachery point over to Ducoc, but I've got to figure out how to record that and where to put that. This is something that will allow him to take a city more easily, though. That's all. That was supposed to be a Fatimid point. It doesn't go to Ducoc. It's going to go over here to Al-Afdal. He's my chief leader, so I want to give it to him. Now, we'll try a couple of these others. And normally I'm not going to roll these all out in front of you. I'll tell you if anything really interesting happens. Okay, we'll do the Syrian one. 51. They get a 7. Tribute. The Caliph of Baghdad demands and receives tribute from the player. The player has to give 25% of all his Byzants to the Caliph. They simply come off the game from any friendly treasury. So I'm going to have to calculate that out. I'll add up all the points he has, and then he gives a quarter of it away. It just disappears. Let's take a look at the Mosles. 23. They're going to get a 9. Jihad. They're inspired by religious fervor to kill the infidel. Their leaders can move an extra hex. Okay, problem here, right? I've already written the orders. It doesn't help now. I don't know what to do with that, but let's keep going. There's a 1-column adjustment in his favor for all combat, and he adds 1 to his die roll for any sieges or subtracts from the opposing besieging player. Should this have happened before the orders? Not according to the sequence of play. What I'm going to allow this to do is to allow him to move an extra hex with any of his leaders at the point beyond what he has ordered. It gives a tremendous flexibility. So that's a powerful ability for him. We'll try to remember that. But now we go on to the Crusaders. Let's look at the Germans, who are not in the lead position, but I want to do these in some sort of order that I can follow easily. And they likewise roll up. 5, 6, they get a 5. Fleet arrives. He's going to get 1 of 4 fleets. The fleet will show up in Famagusta. And if they've all already shown up, it's a nothing happens. Well, I think I just get to pick one of these. It's 25.2. Yeah, I just get to pick a fleet. And that's going to go to the Germans. Now, I'm going to... For this one, I believe I get 2 English and 2 French fleets. I get to decide what the Germans are more likely to get, though. We'll give them an English fleet. I believe that's what we have on this scenario. It doesn't make a lot of difference. One of the 4 fleets, 25.2. I think that's what I saw. English, Flemish, Pisan, and Genoese. Okay, we'll give them the English fleet. That's going to show up here. I have no orders for it, but starting next turn, the Germans are going to have that on their side. And again, I got to try to remember what all these are because I don't want to write down differences for each one. But okay, the next one's going to be our Sicilians, and they're in the lead up here at Iconium, and they have Budamedes for what that's worth. They get a 7 supplies from Cyprus. He gets 50 Byzants in Famagusta, and he has to figure out how to get them to him. Now, he could cut a deal and give a significant portion of them, say, to the Germans who have a fleet. I'm going to write down some of this stuff because I got to remember where I am. Okay, the money's been spent from the Syrians. It was 33 bucks, I think they lost. Maybe 37, I don't know. Whole pile of money. Most of it they took out of Antioch, which I see as that risky forward city with, like, it had 29 bucks in it. Aleppo is also kind of dangerous, but I took the rest out of Damascus, basically, because that had a lot in it. Okay, so now we go to the Southern Franks. 6-4, 14. Nothing happens. Cool. And finally, our Northern Franks. 31, a 7. Supplies from Cyprus. He also will get 50 Byzants in Famagusta. And again, this excess money, there's going to have to be some kind of means of transporting it. If that money's valuable, I mean, one problem I've got is if that's just sitting there, the Egyptians can run up and get to it. Tyre is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hexes away. So if money starts collecting up in Famagusta, it becomes worthwhile for someone to go for it. The only someone who can go for it are the Egyptians. Of course, they have to pay to go take it, but hey, that's a lot of money and well worth it. It's the movement here. Just realized something I hadn't mentioned is the river lines cost an extra movement point. So coming out of Damascus, Dukak here has orders to make it to Sidon, and Sokman is up here gathering up with him. I'm going to send Sokman back somewhere to take command of some troops at a city and start funneling these troops out of Jerusalem because I need more force up to face the Crusaders, however that's going to work out. Okay, so anyway, Dukak will be coming out here 1, 2, 3, 4 as he crosses the river, 5, 6 movement points. He actually isn't going to make it all the way to Sidon, which means I'm not going to get cash for this. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. I'll do this once more. He's got 9 strength points. I think he's okay, but I may be wrong. Nah, he owes $5, but I've given him a treasury to haul with him so he can pay that. We move into the September 1 turn. Now, some interesting things are starting to happen here. First of all, for the Crusaders, Bohemon's getting closer and closer to Seleucia. If you recall, I believe Bohemon's the one with the boat, right? No, the Germans are. Godfrey has the boat. The money is in Bohemon's and Robert of... which one you want to make it? Let's say Robert, Duke of Flanders, or Count Flanders, Robert, Duke of Normandy. They're both, I've split them up. You can see that Robert and Raymond kind of combined their movement. So they both got penalized. They both had to take 2 losses, $10 or Byzants. Meanwhile, here Godfrey paid the entire thing here. So now comes an interesting turn. The negotiations over how this money is getting out of Famagusta are very intriguing. And if it doesn't get out of there, do the Egyptians take a stab at it? They have to pre-plot that. So they don't really know whether or not it's safe to grab. On the other hand, owning Famagusta is worthwhile. Once they take it, once they pay the bucks to go grab it, it becomes a victory point city for them. It's, I think, a 3 city. But they need a force to go take it of some sort or another. So they'd have to dispatch, say, the leader that's here already to go take that. Now, if they were sure they would get the money, if that fleet hadn't shown up, hey, bonus, 100 Byzants and a city, wow, that's great. But they're not in that position. Instead, what we're looking at is 3 Crusader players with some kind of deal that they need to work out to get that money out of there. To get that money out of there, well, it's probably going to be sailing into Seleucia, which Bohemond can grab. Someone else could conceivably maybe get somewhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No one else is going to be able to reach a port in time. And bypass that one up there, which could have been helpful perhaps. Although I would have to stop at a neutral port on the way, which is safe, unless somebody goes and takes it. So here's the issue. Let's say Bohemond's the one who owns this. Okay, he can easily work out a deal for the money that he's getting. Maybe, hey, you can have $20 if you transport my money to me. Great. That all works fine. But the other guy's money, who is that? The northern dude, the Roberts, the para-Roberts, they have a problem. They've got to pay the Navy, the owner of the Navy, Godfrey, and probably they have to pay Bohemond not to just take the money when it arrives. So there's going to be some kind of three-way deal here for how that money should be allocated. And of course, poor Raymond's cut out of it. But Raymond starts out with the most money. He's still got over 100 Byzants left, which is quite sweet, actually. All right. Another place that has problems, the Mossels here have run out of cash, and that's going to start causing them trouble. Now, they only have 10 strength points there, which means that they can move 6 attrition points or 3 hexes without losing any more forces. They've gotten out of the desert, and now they can start going to Samosata. Alternatively, though, they could also do some bribes on one of these. Melatina is a useful city. The problem with a bribe, of course, is the Armenians can be counter-bribed, but once you own their city, they just become troops at that point. So the $5 bribe there might be worthwhile, unless somebody else wants to put that bribe in, but I can't see any of the Crusaders just doing a speculation that they'll be able to be the guy who rushes out there. I mean, obviously, if they're the one who gets control of it, they will, but they'll have to keep paying each turn to make sure the Mossels don't get that. And of course the Mossels could outbid or whatever. It just seems to me that you don't want to throw bids around if you're not pretty much sure that you can use it that turn effectively. All right, a deal was apparently worked out for the Famagusta gold. Essentially, the Germans with the fleet are going to get 30 of it. Bohemond's already put that $30 up. The other 70 get transferred. Trying to remember how I was splitting that up. I think it was 40-30. May have been 35-35 though. I didn't really write it down. That's not decided yet, in the sense of that money hasn't actually been moved. There's still 100 gold here that has to be moved down. And the additional money from it to the northern Franks, the Roberts, isn't due, according to the agreement, until Bohemond has his hands on it. Then he will transfer the appropriate amount. Now, he could just shaft them. You really don't want to screw your allies over at this point in the game, and the Christians really are kind of allied, and the Muslims to some extent are. Certainly we see the Fatimids and the Syrians allied. If you get too much interfaith squabbling, you're just not going to succeed in your goals. The Muslims won't be able to stop the Christians if they're squabbling too much, and the Christians simply will not get. They're going to have a hard time. Antioch, if I remember correctly, it's a tough nut to crack if the Syrians try to defend it. And it looks like they are. They're shifting forces forward. The Egyptians made the choice not to go for Famagusta. Basically, their feeling is, You know, if this is going to fail, it'll fail for a turn and probably fail another turn past. I use die rolls for these things. Now I go on to the events phase, but one other thing that's going on, there's a bribe. The Mosul Turks bribed Thoris, which is going to get them Edessa. That's important. You know, they have no income, basically. And if they give up Tarsus, which they're going to have to do very shortly, they need a way in. This guy's going to be able to make it to Samosata. And this guy actually has orders to go to Edessa. I think I could have written orders for Thoris, too. Kind of taking a Machiavelli-type idea into the game, which isn't really covered in the rules. You know, it's a funny thing. I know Armada, which I played recently, is touted as having some of the worst rules of any S&T type games. You know, they're trivial compared to this. The difficulties, and I'm talking about the original rules to Armada, the little issues that you have to fix in that game, and especially with the, you know, couple of paragraphs of errata that people talk about. Oh, it was a full page of errata. Yeah, well, a lot of it was such minor stuff. This thing, even after the errata, is nearly an unplayable game, which is why Mike Scott made this additional set of errata. I don't know why this one doesn't get the reputation Armada does. This is a very cool game, there's no question. But, oh boy, did it not get enough effort put into it in terms of really kind of hammering out what the game... you know, I mean, it must have been play tested, but the rules don't express however people are playing it. Maybe they were all making it up as they went along. I don't know. All right, on to random events. Fatimids opened up with an interesting one, a plague. And then we roll on this plague and Muslim reinforcement table to see what happens. It's an 11 to 66 die roll, 64. We're going to have a plague in Lampron. Now I got to find Lampron, wherever that is. That may be it there. Oh, that's Sidon. I don't know where Lampron is. Probably doesn't have anybody in it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So, that immediately suffers a siege attrition die roll. And I got 5 strength points there. Not that that really matters. And we'll just roll here, and that's the number of strength points that just die there. Okay, so we lose 1. No biggie. Some Armenians. And that's all she wrote for that. Additional offense, both the Syrians and the Mosuls got dissension, which just means they can't operate with the other players well, Muslim or Christian. They will have an inability to cooperate with anyone else. What else did we get of interest? We got more gold. More gold for the Sicilian Normans, which our boat carrier immediately and kindly is agreeing to transport. He's hoping the Sicilians will hand him maybe $10 extra for that transport. But it's just a matter of let's get the money out of there before the Fatimids can grab it. The Germans, oh, poor them. Good old Baldwin of Boulogne here. There's an event that says, hey, basically a leader goes home. Well, actually what it is you roll a die for each leader in your faction, and on a 6 he'll go home. For $10 plus 5 per strength point that he has, you can keep him around. They paid the $35. That was a rather major loss of money for the Germans, who are the ones who got the $30 this turn. So they basically lost that windfall. They're hoping to get some more off of Bohemond, though, next turn in a bribe, just by being nice and carrying that. Southern Franks, Raymond got a point of treachery, which I've got to record over on here. I've got it right there. And then for the Northern Franks, they got a Pisan boat. Now, here's the problem. They don't have orders for that extra boat written, which means they're still going to be being transported into Seleucia. They could deny that and throw a monkey wrench into all the deals and everything. They want to make sure that the Egyptians don't take the money. As it stands, I think they're paying 20 and getting 30. I think that was the deal that I agreed to. So we go on to the movement. And as we push halfway through September, Fatimids positioning themselves up here along the coastal areas. Dukak and Sockman are in Sidon, getting themselves closer to try to defend their own territory up here. The Fatimids might send some forces forward, but they feel like they probably are more willing to let the Syrians fight. We'll see. Basically, their reason for going forward would be, what will I get out of it? Can you give me a port? Can I have something? That's the general reason for that. The Mosuls, like we said, over to Edessa and Samosata. For the Crusaders, Bohemon's in Seleucia. He's picked up all that money. He's got the extra 50 in his pocket right now. He can hand some of that over as a bribe and swallow the rest of that. And of course, he may wish to give some money to the Germans for their participation. What we've got is Godfrey and Raymond following a more northern route, while the southern route is Bohemond and the Normans. Budimid's following Bohemond, trying to catch up to him because he'll be better off to siege. At this point, it looks like the Mosuls are going to have to abandon Tarsus. They'll grab their treasury out of there and run on the next turn, if I do everything right. Right now, I just have to do the collection of income, and then we move on to that next turn. I always move that a little early for whatever. Okay, orders are down for this September 2 turn, and the bribes that are happening are all coming from Sicily, and they have to do with the delivery of this money. They're going to be giving $10 to the Germans and $30 out of that 50 to the Northerns. Then I'm going to have the event check. While you're looking for ways to abuse the system with the movement rolls, also with the treasury rolls you're allowed to, essentially. You can bribe someone and the money just appears with them. But if it's your own money, you have to slowly transport it. It's a bit of a goofy situation, but you have money just flying from here to here, no worries about anything. At the very least, there should be a line of communication, I guess, but that's also not even specified. And it may not make sense because I could bribe the Fatimids with money, and the line of communication wouldn't even make sense anymore without boats. Anyway, there's no way to really impose on it. Money would be able to change hands over long areas, but it would require a significantly complicated system to transport that money behind the scenes and still, somehow have it verifiable or whatever. So here it just slides over during the bribery scene, which again, whatever you agreed to in negotiation may not actually take place. So the bribe might be given, but later in the turn, there's nothing that forces the person to do what they say anyway. So, it's an abstraction, but it's a bit of a disturbing one. Again, they can be cheated. Okay, regarding events. Two of the Muslim events were caravans coming to Damascus. That's 100 ducats, or bezants, making it into Damascus. Now, how that works is, during the income phase, those are just going to go to the Syrian player and be set up there. But if anybody walks on the caravan route before that, of course, they've already plotted their movement, right? So there's no opportunity here. It's just if you happen to be sitting on it waiting for them, they get to grab it instead. what else did we got? We got a dissension. The Syrians actually got a dissension out of all theirs. For the Crusaders, I don't remember most of them. Raymond got himself about up here. Oh, Bohemond lost. He had 2 of his leaders try to go home. He paid one off, which came to $20 for 2 strength points. But one of them only had 1 strength point. He let that guy go. He's in the bag now over here. It's a hard call, you know. Is it worth $15 for 1 strength point? Yes and no. If you're moving a distance and it's costing you, probably, but a strength point's not all that important, although you don't get them back, and Bohemond has few enough. There's another event that was, oh yes, the final event, the Northern Normans got an assassination event. So this is going to allow them to assassinate a Muslim leader, with the die roll going to be compared to the target's guile rating. But if it fails, the player's commander loses a guile point from his rating. Now that's going to be 14.3 if the rules align to the numbers. You know, all these little paragraphs with numbers are a great thing when they work, but they might not. Here they do. So we have the assassins. There's an I choose the leader I want to kill and I roll a die. If the roll is higher than the character's guile, I get to assassinate him. But I subtract 2 from the roll. And any army strength points won't remain. They get dispersed amongst them. Well, who is this? This is kind of our Norman Franks. We're planning on splitting up again. It's almost not worth doing, because it's a 50-50 chance of losing a point of guile. But I think I can do it with any leader. No, it's got to be my chosen commander. It's got to be someone who ranks as a commander. I'm going to have Robert of Normandy do it. He's got the lesser of my guiles. And he'll try to pop Yagi here off. So with a -2 to the die roll, means I need a 4, 5, or 6 to succeed. I do not get it. So Robert of Normandy, whatever the hell he is going to have a -1 guile. And I'll try to keep track of changes to guile in that column, and treachery points over here. Somebody got a treachery point, I think. Alright, on to the actual. Not much happened in the movement plots. Fatima's holding steady. The Syrians kind of moving Dukak forward to take a position up near Antioch. I want to hold the line if I can there. Of course, if we defeat the Crusaders somehow up in the north, then it becomes mostly a free-for-all between the Muslims. Crusaders want to be careful not to fight each other, though. They cannot afford to weaken their strength until they're winning. And then they can start their squabbling, which I don't know if they actually raised swords to each other, but they came close quite a few times, actually, even early on. All right. Slow movement by Robert and Raymond's side, but Godfrey and Bohemond, Godfrey especially, took a hit in terms of paying $10 to get there, have both rushed into Tarsus. They both want to get in there. I'm going to give Godfrey the red die. Bohemond's got a +1 on his die because of his higher guile. And Bohemond ends up taking Tarsus. Now all his troops don't fit in here. It only holds 25. He's got like 4 strength points outside with Bohemond. But he's just taken another important city. Meanwhile, Seleucia has fallen to Robert. That is worth a victory point. But remember that Christians have to record what cities they want to keep. It's unlikely they'll write down a level 1 city, but if they do, it'll be one that they hold already and don't see any chance of it falling. Now it's time to record the income, including the big $100 that went. So we are at the beginning of the October turn, and this is a point where the real decision making has to start coming about, especially for the Muslims. The Syrians are in this troubling situation. The Fatimids, willing to leave the Syrians alone. They've told them, look, you're safe. I may even support you if you let me gain some additional ground. We can discuss that, but you don't have to worry about me. Because honestly, the Fatimids want to see the Syrians have sufficient strength to hurt the Crusaders heavily. They don't want to squabble at this point. The Fatimids are in good shape right now, and the assumption that they have is the Syrians will lose some ground. So, if the Syrians are willing to trade some ground to the Fatimids will move their own forcing. By the way, that brings something up. The naval rules, we've now got a whole pile of ships for the Crusaders. They could move 30 strength points of troops, Bohemond's entire force, all the way down to Egypt, if they could agree to do so. The problem is they can't just sail down to Egypt. They've got to go from port to port. They've got to make landings. And that creates a problem. So you could send Bohemond over to Famagusta. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And Caesarea is the next furthest location along the line. So basically this whole part of the coast becomes available to the Crusaders. But that's a risky area. Now, if they found a safe place to land, say down here at Haifa, and then they could jump down to Egypt, it would be pretty clear that that's what they're doing, that they're either making a landing for Jerusalem or making an attack on Egypt. With the secret movement, it's not, you still have a little bit of wonder in your head, but you get some reaction time. It's not like they're just going to be sailing right down to Egypt and striking it. So that's why there is very little of Fatimid forces in Egypt. But they could run into some danger. They don't have a whole lot of ships. You got to be careful with this. The wind, not a lot of wind, but I don't want to knock things over. They have, I think, 3 ships, which is what the Crusaders have. If the Crusaders get to a 4th ship, it's going to be tough for the Fatimids to really control their whole coastal territory here, and they kind of need to. But going back to what I was saying, so the Fatimids are willing to leave the Syrians out to dry, more or less. The Moslems have an even worse position here. They don't just want to see the Syrians defeated to any extent. They need to see the Syrians knocked out of that area. If they don't, they're going to come in against the Syrians. And so they're almost more aligned with the Crusaders at this point. Now, as of right now, they're just saying, I'm going to hold back, watch what happens, and I'm going to take advantage of it. So, every time the Syrians say, hey, can I get some help? We'll see. You're going to have to offer me something pretty good, like Aleppo and Antioch and, whatever. But they had to pick their victory conditions early in the game, and they did not pick Antioch. They picked Syrian heartland. So it's really unlikely you're going to see a Mosul agreement with Syria without some significant concessions in some of the most valuable territory the Syrians have. Now, for the Crusaders, they also have to think here. One of the things that they have is the Muslims kind of run away from them. We saw it happen here at Tarsus. It might happen at Antioch. This is totally ahistorical. But if Syria can conserve their force and gather it for one big hit, one big battle, and that could be at Antioch or it could be further down. And there are some advantages. See, Antioch's got a nice position, though. That's why you don't want to let the Crusaders that far. But there are some advantages to letting the Crusaders kind of spread out and leave some opening because the Moslems then maybe will raid them, or maybe a Crusader army will camp out at Antioch and another one at Edessa, and then you've only got half the force moving on its way down to Jerusalem to face that. So these are the kind of things that you have to keep in mind. What do you want to do as the Syrians to best face this Crusader force? And the Crusaders kind of have the same, geez, what am I going to do to best, you know, gain what I want individually, but that almost requires the Crusaders as a whole to succeed. Because if the Crusaders are weakened too much, a big power like Syria or the Moslems can just wipe them off the map, right? If you're down to just one Crusader army, that's about equal to half the Syrians or the Moslems or the Fatimids or whatever. And also the Muslims can get additional forces. So they've kind of got to work together. Now, why is Antioch so important? It's because of the terrain around here. There's crap here. But once you get through Antioch, and you could do this with a naval invasion by Bohemond or whatever, things become pretty open and clear. There's a lot of ports available and such not. So there is some possibility to just say, screw it, we'll start shipping armies in here and see if they can survive. The problem with that, well, there's a lot of Syrian force kicking around out here, apparently. That's one of the reasons the Syrians can't just en masse move up to Antioch and make a stand there, because you can end run that. And then it'll be a long walk with a big army taking heavy attrition or moving very slowly or whatever. Although the Syrians have money. They have a lot of money right now. It may not be in the right place. Most of it's sitting in Damascus now, $122. But what do we got here? Dukac is in Tripoli. He doesn't have a whole hell of a lot. You know, they don't have it centralized with an army right now. They might want to start moving a treasury up into place, because cash back in Damascus doesn't really help them terribly. Anyway, just a bunch of thoughts while I'm waiting for something to load. In terms of actually, first of all, nobody put any bids in this turn. In terms of actual events that had effect, some of them, like dissension for the Syrians and Moslems, aren't really going to play into anything. The Germans got dissension, though. They're going to be in the same area. They made a deal with Bohemond. Hey, let's press on and get to Antioch. We can take St. Simeon. And that'll get us a port over here, or we can maybe take Latakia. The reason that's important is they're not going to have supply come November, the rain term, for 1 month, but that's terrible. Of course, they could spend lots of Byzants on supply, but it'll mean they're on the worst table there if they don't push forward, if they don't get a port. Now, they could hang back at Tarsus, but it's worth continuing on. Worst comes to worst, they spend lots and lots of money on the siege of Antioch. They would like to take Antioch. They would also like to take a port that they can work off of. This one won't work because of the river here. They probably won't be able to find a tracing path through here. These cities, well, not this one. So actually, it's hard to find a pathway through things, though. So it looks like there wouldn't be a supply route. So they would have one from here heading through here and then around to here, but now out of here, where would they go? They can't go here, they can't go here, they can't go here, so they're kind of cut off. So they won't be able to, well, they couldn't cross the river anyway. So really they'd have to pass through here. There's a force there, so they can't keep going through there. So there's not going to be a way around this river. Worst comes to worst, they can get their supply from St. Simeon for the 1 month if that's what it works out to be. On the other hand, maybe they can push down and have Antioch and pay the extra bucks. Raymond's in on this too. He wants to push forward. The Northerns, less so, and we'll see why, because they're kind of dragging behind. Oh, I forgot to write orders for Budimides. He's got to move too. And I'll because I just forgot that. I'll put them in. But anyway, as to events, we had some Armenian revolts that didn't affect anyone because they weren't on the Mosuls, the only people who held an Armenian. But we got another 50 bucks. Now this could have come in up here because it was Byzantine money. But that would be a real hard job to get moving down the coast. Since the Normans have boats and they're the ones who got it, they'll be taking it and trying to figure out some way to get the cash to themselves. At the very least, Seleucia is an open port, but they can't move it this turn. All right, let me fix Budimid's, handle the movement, and I'll come back. And we're getting pretty close to loading this one. A lot of activity taking place here. Syrians here are outside of Latakia, actually. They, again, I miscounted. Coming out of Tripoli, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not enough to get back in. So, yeah, there are some taxes that weren't made. Not too big a deal there. I am gathering the Syrian forces to get together at Antioch because I believe that's where you stop the Crusaders if possible. The Crusaders themselves kind of left an issue behind here at Lampron. Somebody could have taken this. Preferably maybe Raymond or Robert, one of the people who don't have cities yet, could have taken it and kind of bankrolled it for the end of the game as a 2-point city. Hey, it's worth a couple of victory points, 3 I think, at the end of the game if they put it on their list. Nobody's going to take it from them. But they didn't put a bid in. They didn't do that. Robert still could, but he doesn't have any supplies. I accidentally sent all the supplies with the other Robert. When they briefly gathered together, they combined their treasuries and then split apart again. That's not going to be too big a deal because the Normans are the ones who have the boat here. So if he moves into Seleucia, he can take that in. But it does mean that Robert of Normandy is going to take a while to get into play. Now, with the boat there, and if he can convince other people to maybe help him out with a little sailing, he might be able to just circumvent the whole Antioch thing and make a landing, say at St. Simeon, or down here, maybe as far down as, let's see if he can get to Beirut. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Not quite. And most of this looks covered right now. Famagusta is an interesting option. Of course, you take Famagusta, and he might just send 1 unit there. You take Famagusta and you kind of like grabbed all future money that comes in by sea, and therefore, well, you could either just grab it, but that might piss people off, but you could also take a toll off of it. Hey, I get 10 bucks of it because you're using my city, or 15 bucks or whatever. You really can demand whatever you like out of that money. All right. Up this one goes, and we're heading into where bad weather starts. Next turn's fine still, but that's the last turn that it's fine. And you can see 1, 2, let's see how far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Bohemond and Godfrey could make it to Antioch next turn. There'd still be a supply line traced, so they wouldn't be in the bad situation for that. But then the next turn, unless they can convince, there's nothing really that can be done because the boats are here. So there's not going to be a line of communication at the beginning of their next turn if they move to Antioch. So maybe they don't want to go right for Antioch in the rainy weather. I don't know. Of course, during the winter, attrition levels go higher and they'll take automatic losses. Again, they can be paid off. All right, up it goes.